Panican. It's not Democrat. It's not Republican. It's Panican.
It's the Panican party.
Yeah.
Are we going to put like a head in the sand like an ostrich on the party logo?
We have been in a global trade war for 60 years and getting our butts kicked. Trump is the first president in decades with the guts to fire back.
There it is.
There it is.
To my point about nobody knows, Thomas Sowell doesn't even know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so he's speculating if he's doing this, then we'll be okay if it's a negotiating tactic only. But if he intends to use tariffs like as a policy, then we run a huge risk of an international trade war,
which
nobody wins. We're going to have to be prepared for it not to feel good for a while. Things are going to get more expensive.
I'm still waiting patiently for even one person to explain why every other country in the world can have whatever tariffs they want, but not the United States. Does anyone know what Trump's up to with this? The answer is no.
Yeah, we don't really know.
Hello, and welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian with Sterling and Andrew.
Hey, how's it going?
Before we get started, make sure to check out patriotpostshop.com where you can purchase your Gulf of America baseball hat, cap, whatever you call it. They're great. They're kind of faded blue or faded red, and it says Gulf of America. Because what's the Gulf of Mexico? I don't know what that is.
It's called the Gulf of Drilling for Oil.
There you go. The Gulf of Freedom.
It's all about freedom, man, like this.
All right, moving on. Our topic today is don't be a panican about the tariff.
No, don't panic though, honey.
So maybe I should explain that first thing.
Yes. What is a Panican, Sterling?
Yes. So Donald Trump has informed us about a new political party that has been created. So I'm going to read this quote from one of Trump's tweets. The United States has a chance to do something that should have been done decades ago. Don't be weak. Don't be stupid. Don't be a panican. A new party based on weak and stupid people. Be strong, courageous, and patient, and greatness will be the result. So that's where the word comes from, Panican.
Yeah,
it's not Democrat, it's not Republican, it's Panican.
It's the Panican party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we going to put like a head in the sand like an ostrich on the party logo?
That's the perfect animal. You figured it out. It's an ass for the Democrats. It's an elephant for the Republicans, and it's an ostrich with its head in the sand for the Panicans.
For the Panican attack. Yeah. The Panican party.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic job with your Donald Trump impression.
Thank you.
Sterling. Yeah. Professional level.
I'm very highly educated. I know words. I have the best words.
Do a Donald Trump impression.
At least for a few sentences.
Yes. Even if you hate him.
You got to at least have the many have said it. Lots of people are saying it. You got to have that.
I'm not saying it. They're all saying it.
Exactly.
Sometimes they say huge.
It's the best.
So what's happening with these tariffs, Andrew?
Well, for the first time in like 100 years, we're flipping the script on tariffs. My understanding, and just a disclaimer, I'm not an economist. I'm not a professional. I know almost nothing about what I'm talking about in this instance. So,
well, don't worry, Andrew. That's why I'm here, because I know everything about everything. Because I use X.
Yes.
And as you know, if you use X, then you go from being a national security expert one week to a tariff expert the next week to a doctor the next week. And it's really great. All you got to do is be on X all the time.
Yes, be on X, use Grok. You don't need to go to college.
No, crazy talk.
You heard it from the Pop Culture Contrarian first. Don't go to college, kids. Get on X and AI.
Yes.
Don't listen to me.
Exactly.
Anyway, back to tariffs. So this was a platform position that Trump ran on. We're going to achieve trade fairness, essentially, with all of our trading partners. And the idea has been that for at least the past 50 years, if not longer, there's been a disparate situation between us and other countries. So they would levy very high taxes on American, or tariffs on American goods, which is it's a tax is what it is.
Yeah.
On American goods being imported into their countries, whereby we would not levy in kind the same against them. In some cases, it would be for the same type of goods. Sometimes it would be different goods. It depends on the country and what they make.
And some of what Trump has been calling tariffs. So this all started on last Wednesday, which will be 8 days ago when this episode comes out, Wednesday the 2nd. He called that Liberation Day, and that's when we launched these reciprocal tariffs on the rest of the world. And the calculation he used wasn't just strict tariffs. It includes a bunch of other stuff. And then, so like he would say, for instance, I don't have the numbers before me. We're not doing the numbers because we're not experts. But it was like something like 97% tariffs from Vietnam. And so we're doing half of that in response. So 46 or whatever half of 97 is. We're really good at numbers today. But that includes things like manipulating their money or just various other trade deficits in general, various other things other than strict tariffs. But the kind of the question here is, what is it that Trump is exactly trying to get out of all these?
Yeah.
And what is your take, Andrew? Does anyone know what Trump's trying to get out of all this?
Well, he's not making it very clear, which I would argue is a bit of a problem. It's not to be unexpected for Trump, his whole art of the deal kind of bravado and his negotiating tactics. He wants the other guy to be guessing it all the time. And I would say in this case, maybe not the best idea. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
If everyone's going to be playing by the rules, and this is essentially setting the stage for these are the new rules. If people are going to know how to play by the rules, they got to know what they are.
Yeah.
And so many people are kind of guessing, what is it that Trump is trying to get at? I believe that he is using them more as a negotiating tactic.
Yeah. Well, and that's what most people believe, but then that's kind of there's been some mixed messaging even there because like Israel dropped all their tariffs, which I don't think they had super high tariffs, but they dropped all their tariffs ahead of Liberation Day. And I think Vietnam offered to do the same. And Trump still hit them with tariffs. He hit everyone with either like, if they had a really high tariff, like 70%, he'd hit them with half, so 35% on their stuff. Or if they were someone who was treating us more fairly, it's just 10% across the board. So like Australia got a 10%. I think Israel got a 10%. A bunch of our more allies got 10%. Canada and Mexico are different. He's negotiating with them separately. But the kind of the confusing thing is, if Israel's offering no tariffs, why did you then put tariffs on Israel?
Right. Or also in situations where it's not a big player and maybe they have some tariffs, but saying that you're going to take whatever that tariff is and then cutting it in half and saying it's a discount, when in reality, that country already, they don't have the same kind of trade back and forth as they do with the bigger players. And so it's going to hurt them almost for no reason. Like the smaller countries maybe are not necessarily taking advantage of the United States and are now just being punished for just doing business with the United States.
Yeah. So I think I kind of asked this and you answered just when I asked the question, does anyone know what Trump's up to with this? The answer is no.
Yeah, we don't really know.
No one knows. I've been asking everyone. I've asked my mom's opinion. I've asked everyone's opinion because they all seem to be equally valid at the moment. No one really knows what Trump is up to at this time.
Yeah. Well, especially Thomas Sowell was recently in a nowadays rare interview at the spry age of 94.
Right.
The guy's still sharp as a tack.
So sharp.
But he had an interview with Dave Rubin, and essentially the question was, well, Dave he highlighted the interview. I think it was another person doing the interview.
Yeah.
But more or less he said, okay, if what Trump is doing with the tariffs as a negotiating tool, if that's the case, we're good. If it's not, and to my point about nobody knows, Thomas Sowell doesn't even know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so he's speculating if he's doing this, then we'll be okay if it's a negotiating tactic only. But if he intends to use tariffs like as a policy, then we run a huge risk of an international trade war,
which
nobody wins.
Nobody wins. Well, that's what they claim.
That's what Thomas Sowell claims.
That's what Thomas Sowell claims, and it's what just about everyone claims. If the U.S. does to these other countries what these countries have been doing to the U.S., then suddenly everything blows up, and it's like, hey, well, hang on.
Yeah.
Why is that? There's some confusion because Trump is also seemingly trying to, one of the big things he's wanting to do, and I think J.D. Vance has a lot of input on this or influence on why Trump values this so much, is bring manufacturing back to the U.S.
Right.
And there's been huge investment from countries around the world in building in the U.S. And like, I think General Motors just started hiring more people at one of its plants in the U.S. and all sorts of, I think John I shouldn't say that because I don't know if John Deere did it or not. But several other companies have moved their manufacturing back to the US when they'd been talking about moving away. And so we're going to be getting more of this manufacturing. And the argument I'm seeing, because one of the factories that we're supposed to be opening up is, I guess, a toaster factory.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, why do we need to make toasters in the US? This doesn't make any sense.
We need to make everything in the United States.
We have to have the feeder supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to make the big fancy jets and fighter jets and spacecraft, you got to have people who can get an entry-level job at a toaster factory and learn basic machinery. Because it's a lot easier to train that guy who's done that for 10 years to then build parts of an aircraft than to train the 30-year-old who has no experience to build parts of the aircraft.
And, on the topic of jobs, what Trump is doing here effectively, whether it works or not, we will find out.
Yeah.
But he is stepping up and he's got the cojones, as it were, that nobody else has. And that is to right what was the wrong that the Clinton administration in the early 90s set forth. And that was more or less shipping our jobs overseas to China and setting that precedent that has for about 30 years been a drain on the middle class and has drained America's independence.
Yeah.
And it has gotten rid of all the jobs that regular people need to have. Trump has decided we're not going to let that happen anymore. And to your point earlier, Sterling, mentioning, there are countries who have unfairly levied really high tariffs against our goods, and we have not reciprocated in kind for a time that was necessary after World War II.
Right. We were deliberately generous in the decades after World War II because Europe was destroyed and it needed to rebuild.
Yeah. But that never righted itself. And then, of course, Democrat policy and frankly, everybody who held power from Clinton on until now sold American workers down the river. And so that combination of things has just been America's on the ropes.
And we're kind of getting into the weeds here, but honestly, this is all related. And we're just trying to give like a 10,000 foot view of this.
Yeah.
When I was a child, I remember this. I don't know if you remember this, Andrew, but I remember there was this sense in George Bush's presidency that we were giving China these kind of favorable trade deals. We were letting our manufacturing move over there and paying their workers, better wages and lifting them out of poverty. And the idea was that China was going to become this westernized, friendly nation state that we could interact with, and it would just make everyone's life better. Mm-hmm. And instead, China has doubled down on this new kind of version of communism they're creating, which is like communism that keeps capitalism as a pet or something.
Yeah. Capitalist funded communism.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of.
And so what we've learned is that, China's not going to become our friend. They're actually our enemy. And so it is reasonable. It's actually wise to be like, okay, well, we've sent all our manufacturing to China and now they're our enemy. So we got to figure out how to get some of that back. Mm-hmm. And Trump's trying to do that. I want to read a quote from Mark Alexander, who is the founder of the Patriot Post, which is our parent organization. He said, "We have been in a global trade war for 60 years and getting our butts kicked. Trump is the first president in decades with the guts to fire back."
There it is.
There it is. So what Trump is saying, what Mark is saying in that quote, and what a lot of America First commentators are saying is that we've been getting a raw deal and we need to try to fix the system. I think there might even be more to it than that.
Yeah.
I think it's something, maybe if I was a super well-trained economist beyond just an ex-economist, which is almost, I could express this better, but I think there's some way in which the global trading system has been built according to, I want to say, I could be wrong on this, but the word I'm going to use is Keynesian economics, which is where, it's kind of top-down control. It's the government can influence things. You can set people digging ditches and then filling the ditches back up, and that actually boosts the economy. And that's not the type of economics conservatives have ever really subscribed to. It's always been conservatives subscribe to Austrian or Miltonian economics, which is very different. Ironically, Milton is not a fan of tariffs.
Yeah.
But
that is ironic.
It could be that these tariffs are kind of a necessary medicine to, like chemotherapy, kill off the cancerous parts of our trade system and then it's going to hurt everything. But once those cancerous parts are dead, we can stop the tariffs and rebuild in a better direction. That could be what's going on.
And Trump has literally used that language. You have to take the medicine. So that may be a clue into what he's doing, just the fact that he said that. But, we can get into, I think maybe the crux of the show is examining some of the sentiments that we're seeing, particularly on X, and how people are reacting to this whole tariff conversation. But I think one thing is for sure, when you have to take medicine, especially chemotherapy, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a long time. And we're going to have to be prepared for it not to feel good for a while. Things are going to get more expensive. I think some of the projections are going to be $2,000 to $3,000 per year more in regular family expenses in the coming years, which, for somebody who already lives on the edge of things trying to feed kids, I know that's going to hurt me.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to hurt me. I don't have kids, but I don't have $2,000 extra usually just laying around.
Yeah.
The response is, I think you're right, Andrew, the key of what we should be talking about here, because it's interesting. Let's start maybe with kind of what if you can remember back to last week before all this happened, what the expectation was about how these tariffs were going to go. It seemed very much, I think the prevailing wisdom, and it's still the prevailing wisdom, is that these are a bad idea. Trump's going to announce them maybe, and then like that night, he's going to start rolling them back as he negotiates with some of these countries. So far, he's kind of held firm since for the past 5 days. It's not super long, but he hasn't announced any changes yet that I've heard.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Israel situation, they literally dropped their tariffs and then they still get hit. So that's confusing.
I think, just to be clear, I think they offered to drop their tariffs. I don't know if they fully dropped them.
I see.
But yeah, it's interesting. And then I think the feeling in-house here at the Patriot has been, what is Trump doing? Like, can he just tell us what he's doing? And frustration that he's being so unclear.
Yeah, for sure. And our Nate Jackson, he wrote an article, The Pros and Cons of Trump's Tariff Bomb. And a couple of things, he said there are some negatives. I mean, this is essentially a regressive tax.
Yeah.
It's a different way of saying this is going to hurt, especially for lower income earners who are just paying for goods and services.
Right. So I guess, I don't know if this is exactly what a regressive tax is, but the way I've understood tariffs are going to raise prices is we're importing, say, beer from Europe, from England, we'll say. We impose a 10% tariff on England, and what England's naturally going to do is they're going to just raise the price of their beer when it's for sale in the U.S. by 10%. So then when I buy the beer, I'm paying that 10% tariff.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just one of a few points that Nate mentions in his article about some of the pros and cons, because there are both. We're not over here just praising tariffs, because there are drawbacks and there are risks.
Right.
But, one of the pros, he says, is that, and let me find where he mentions what I'm going to say. Trump's famous for the art of the deal, and that's on display here. Trump aide Peter Navarro declared this is not a negotiation, followed by Trump himself saying the tariffs give us great power to negotiate. The media sees a contradiction. Trump sees a rope-a-dope deal-making.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think Trump said today, because China has raised their tariffs actually in response to this new wave of tariffs from the U.S., and Trump is raising our tariffs on them even further. And he's saying, China's screwed because they raised the tariffs. I told them not to. And now I'm going to start negotiating with everyone else tonight, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
So apparently this is about negotiation, but it's not about negotiation. And it's about getting everyone else to lower tariffs, but it's not about getting everyone else to lower tariffs. And it's very unclear. I guess when Trump achieves what he wanted to achieve, hopefully he'll tell us.
Right. But also a side note, regardless of how Trump is handling this and not really knowing exactly what he's doing, everything has been laid. It's like, I heard one person liken it to a bonfire, just a bunch of sticks doused in gasoline, and it was ready to go. It's been 60 years.
Right.
There's been a trade war already. Everything was already in place. And so what Trump is doing here is, he didn't start it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And I think that's an excellent point, Andrew, because a lot of people are trying to blame Trump for all this and say it's all Trump's fault. Well, I don't think you can honestly question that the U.S. has been mistreated by a lot of its allies and even friendly nation states around the world economically. And they've kind of, in lots of ways, been taking advantage of us. And like, we do that on purpose, but like, just to give a really obvious example, all the Europeans brag about their wonderful healthcare and, you know, how great their welfare state is. Well, they also don't pay for their own defense. They rely on us to pay for their defense.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, we don't get that welfare because we're paying for your defense.
Yeah. I will be curious to see over the coming years what that high level of satisfaction in life, you know, it's a reported satisfaction of life, health, et cetera, in European countries based on having access to these programs. I wonder how that's going to actually shake out as they are forced to mount their defense.
Yeah.
And spend money on stuff like tanks and military equipment and not just let the U.S. take the whole bill.
Well, yeah, that's kind of a separate conversation, but I think you're right. I think within 5 to 10 years, we'll see places like Germany start to have to cut their welfare state massively because they're trying to ramp up military industrial production. And they are also destroying all of their power plants and buying energy from Russia. They've just, again, a side note, but Europe has, I think, spent more money in Russia since the start of the Russian-Ukraine war than they've given to Ukraine.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, whose side are you on here? But that's separate from the tariffs. I think, so we've talked about kind of how no one knows what Trump is doing here, except Trump, hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully Trump knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of feels like, oh, this is probably a bad idea, but also the system is messed up. It's not really working the way it should for Americans. And obviously a lot of people who are near retirement are watching. One thing that's been happening this past week is the stock market has been going down. I think it's gone like 6% down since last Wednesday.
Yeah. By and large, it has fallen more than it did in March of 2020.
I don't think that's true. I think it dropped much more precipitously then, actually.
Well, I think the net result, I'm pretty sure that I read that it is dropped at least that much, if not more.
Okay, let's ask Grok real quick. How much did the stock market crash in, should we say, during the COVID lockdowns?
Yeah, in March of 2020.
Okay, I'll say March 2020. Much percent. Sorry, guys. Having to type the question. Here we go. Grok is thinking. It has 10 X posts and 25 web pages. It's still thinking. Okay. The biggest drop was 7.79% on March 9th, which is, that's more.
That's more. It's very close.
Yeah.
So what I mean is it's the biggest since then.
It's definitely the biggest since then. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
For sure. It just to put it in perspective, though, there was also, so that was March 9th, it dropped 7.79%. March 12th, it dropped 9.99%. And then March 16th, it dropped another 12.93%. So that's much bigger than what we're seeing here. But this is...
It's the biggest since COVID.
It's definitely the biggest since then. And of course, all the people with retirement funds that they were getting close to cashing out are like, hello, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
All this money I had is no longer there. And that is understandably concerning for them. And when the stock market crashes, it is actually bad for every American.
Yes.
Even though a lot of people feel like they're completely removed from this because, you know, as the store you shop at suddenly has less money, they're going to have to raise their prices or whatever. It's going to trickle down to you. But I think it is interesting to see how young people have been reacting to this.
Yeah.
Because there's been this mood among young people that, frankly, the typical scapegoat is the boomer generation, is that the boomers have basically stolen all the opportunities for the younger generations and sent it overseas and sent all the manufacturing overseas. And then they tell them to stop, the boomers tell the young generations to stop buying avocado toast, and then they'll be able to buy a house. And it's like, avocado toast is $7 a day and a house is, you know, 50 grand for a down payment. It's like, that's just not, I can't come up with that.
Yeah.
And so the young people's reaction has been largely, of course, it's X. It's been all memes.
Yeah.
Like I've seen some people have just flat out said, I don't care if the magic number of the stock market goes down. It does not affect me. It's gone up every day of my life. Now it's going down a little bit. It has not correlated with increased prosperity for me when it goes up. So I'm not worried about it going down. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of understandable.
Yeah. I mean, they're basically saying two things. One, you know, the stock market is like almost based on lies. You know, it's just a lot of these times you see these stocks, the valuation of certain stocks, and you're just like, how does that even correlate at all with material reality?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, but also there's the situation that many young people face where they can't buy a house,
right,
or start a family,
or pay for a wedding.
Yeah, and we're not talking about like super duper young people. I mean, you're talking about people in their 30s.
I was super blessed in my ability to get a house. It was not because I didn't buy avocado toast and I scraped. And even if I had, I wouldn't have had nearly enough money to do it. The Lord provided for me, and that's how I was able to get a house. But I totally can empathize with all these other young people who that hasn't happened for them yet. And so they're like, I can't possibly save enough money to buy a house anytime soon. And they're at, prime age when we need them to be having a family and having kids.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact figure, but it's many, many years salary that houses cost versus what they did in the 1970s. I think in the 1970s is like maybe 1 or 2 years salary. And now it's like 3+, maybe even 7 years.
I'm looking that up.
We'll get the exact numbers. We said we wouldn't talk about specific numbers on this episode, and we're going to pull the numbers.
Yeah. Oh, well. I want to just share, you were talking about how the stock market is kind of made up. The numbers are kind of made up. And like we saw that with, I don't know if this was the stock market. I don't know how that valuation was done, but like when Elon Musk bought Twitter for, what was it valued at? $44 billion. And that everyone knew, even when he was buying it, that is far more than it's actually worth.
Yeah.
But he paid it because that's what the stock market or whatever it was said it was worth. But then today, we're recording this April 7th. Today, there was a really fascinating example of just how people's whims is what decides how much the money or how much stocks are worth on the stock market. So here it is. I don't know who all of these people are, but let's see. Okay. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett gave an interview this morning on Fox News where the reporter asked him the question, would Trump consider a 90 days pause in tariffs? And then they asked him, did you hear the question? And he responds, yes, I heard the question. And then a few hours later, someone online misunderstands the tweet where that occurred and thinks he's saying, yes, Trump's doing a 90-day pause on tariffs. And so this goes wild. It's reported by Reuters. And this was like 10 a.m. this morning. It's reported by Reuters. And the market goes up 7 to 10% because everyone's hearing that there's going to be a 90-day pause on tariffs. Then the White House comes out and denies it. And all that value that was created after this complete misinterpretation of a tweet crashes back down. And it's like, okay, none of that was real in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many young people are frustrated because they haven't had the chance to build a 401k. They don't have the extra money to put in the stock market. So when it rises up and crashes down, it doesn't affect them. At least not short term. It may long term, but short term, it has no bearing on their day-to-day life. And people are acting like that actually is what the economy is. It's like, well, no, how much eggs cost at the grocery store or how much the gas costs, that's what the economy is. What the stock market number is, that does not affect my life.
Yep. I found it, the 1970s average home price and the years of salary in the 70s, it would cost 3.5 years of an annual average salary to buy a house. And now it's 6 to 7 years.
So that's a doubling.
Right.
And allegedly from the 1970s to today, we're much more wealthy.
Yeah.
But young people don't feel it. Young people don't feel like they're more wealthy.
Well, materially more so because technology and goods have become much more cheaper to produce. So for example, and we're getting kind of far afield here.
Yeah. Well, it's all related.
Yeah. Like for example, a television set in the 1970s could cost a huge chunk of your annual salary.
Yeah.
And now you could buy one, you would need to buy like 200 TVs to equal the same thing. And so and I think this is where this idea of don't buy the avocado toast comes from. It's this concept of don't buy the luxury items because the luxury items are really, really expensive, but they're not expensive.
Right. A lot of things that would have been luxuries in the 1970s. They're still luxuries today, to be clear, but they would have been expensive luxuries then. And now they're common. Like you can buy, and I have bought a fantastic TV better than anything on the market 10 years ago for $500. That is not a lot of money for something like a TV that you're going to use every day, or, you might use every day.
Yeah.
And, it is out of touch to say things like the avocado toast comment, because you're not actually looking at how much the basic cost of living things have increased.
Right.
You're looking at how much luxuries have increased, and that's a different number.
Yeah. Well, I mean, rents have exponentially increased, cost of goods, and then, of course, wages have not really risen.
Right.
So that's kind of the sentiment where young people are saying, hey, I can't even afford to have the American dream.
So who cares if the stock market crashes?
So they're not really worried about what is happening with the stock market and boomers losing their retirement.
Right.
In the meantime, though, what these young people might not realize is they are going to feel this pain too.
Yeah.
And that is coming in the next few years by way of increase in basic goods and services.
Yeah. If the stock market craters, everything will go up in cost. It's going to hurt you.
Yeah. Well, also with the tariffs,
Right.
those prices, the additional prices are going to be passed on to the consumer. So yeah, everybody's going to feel it.
But there are some getting back to the tariffs. There are some interesting points. So young people are reacting with memes. That's what young people do. At least the ones I like. This person said, I'm still waiting patiently for even one person to explain why every other country in the world can have whatever tariffs they want, but not the United States. And it's a picture of a skeleton on a park bench.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's a good point. All these countries do have tariffs on us, but when we put tariffs on them, it's the end of the world?
Yeah.
What is the deal here? Why are we held to such a different standard? Because we're young people. Or at least the young people feel that way. We don't have much to do with the history of America. We have to do with the moment we're living in now. And in the moment we're living in now, America gets a raw deal compared to the rest of the world. Why is that? Why should I put up with it? And Trump says, you don't have to put up with it. Allegedly, we'll see.
Yep. We'll see how it goes. I personally hope that it results in more fair agreements and that it does not result in international trade war. But we shall see, because really it's not clear what's going to happen.
It's not. But you have all these countries. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the EU will negotiate for a 0-for-0 tariff deal with the U.S. So all these countries that had tariffs on us and were quite happy having tariffs on us are suddenly like, hey, we'll do 0 tariffs on you if you do 0 on us, which presumably some of these will happen. Presumably we'll start doing the 0-for-0 deal with some people. Trump hasn't done that yet. He said he's going to start tonight. I guess we'll see. Maybe by the time this episode is out, you'll know better than we do. I hope you do, because right now it's just like, hey, what does the janitor think? He's probably as good as anybody.
Yeah, and that's why we're talking about this, because we don't know anything about anything when it comes to this stuff, but we're telling you.
Yeah. Well, somebody has to. All right. Is there any other points of this that we talked about ahead of time that we haven't gotten to yet, Andrew?
I think we covered everything.
Okay. It's a mystery wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in a puzzle, wrapped in a Sudoku puzzle, wrapped in a Wordle.
And it's called The Art of the Deal.
And hopefully Trump is going to pull this out. I believe he can. I believe he's going to, but it's just, you don't really know what game he's playing.
Yep.
All right. I guess that's our episode on don't be a Panican about the tariffs, even though we don't know what's going on.
Yes.
This is the Pop Culture Contrarian with Sterling and Andrew. We're missing Thomas today. And we're brought to you by the Patriot Post, which is the oldest conservative news digest on the web. It's right and it's free. So tariffs don't affect us. We're the same value all the time.
Yep.
Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
See ya.